Delighted to say joining me today is the whole show, former Conservative Government Advisor Claire Pearsall. Good morning.
Morning.
Lovely to see you. Is it Liberation Day today?
Well, we don't know yet, do we? We don't know how this is going to affect us. We don't know what the details are. We've all got to wait until 9 o'clock this evening. It's a long day.
He's going to talk for a long time before then. Do we?
Yes.
And does it all change tomorrow? And does it all? I mean, this thing, we've had taxes that have gone on and they've changed the rate. They've been delayed for a month and they've come on and then they've been off. And there's frantic phone calls. We know that the White House press secretary was saying yesterday, around 5, 6 p.m. every evening, it's like, right, this is what I'm doing. I'm settling in, watching a White House press briefing. And she was talking about how, the president is very open to phone calls from leaders. The question is why, he seems to think that his friends, that US friends or allies, Canada, Europe, Britain, that we somehow are sort of worse offenders than China or Russia in terms of the need to put sanctions on us. And this whole idea that we should be reciprocal tariffs, I think that's perfectly fair. If the EU is putting tariffs on US goods going in the EU, why shouldn't they put tariffs back in return? Seems reasonable. But we've certainly been working behind the scenes and have been since Brexit on a possible US trade deal. The question is what concessions we make over, pharmaceutical companies, the NHS. People are obsessed with chlorinated chicken.
I know.
You go on holiday to America, you have buffalo wings, you've had chlorinated chicken. Are you still alive yet? Well, get over it. And I'm sorry. But of course, another threat to our farmers, that Australia trade deal, massive impact.
Yeah.
So, there are big impacts. Trade, there's lots of companies that don't trade with America, but there are a lot that do. A lot of big industries, like the car industry, 800,000 workers. There is a big concern that can kind of tip us over and to zero growth, we're almost there anyway, to minus growth, to recession.
It will do, and potentially losing 40,000 jobs in the automotive sector, which is a hefty portion of those jobs. But I think we need to understand, are these going to be reciprocal tariffs?
Yeah.
Or is he going back to the blanket 20% on all countries, which was the last thing I heard last night? So I think he's
Does
going
he
backwards
know
and
yet
forwards.
either?
No, I don't think he does. And I think that we're all going to have to wait up until that moment that he starts speaking at some point for that detail to come through.
Is this all just a cunning ruse from him? Sort of, it's again, he's the big disruptor. You can't predict. People get panicked. He could have upped them to 80% any time. And I was watching an interesting report, Ed Conway, who is a superb, he loves his graphs.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant in all the figures. And he was talking about, in the Cold War, we were looking at basically equivalent of 48% tariffs. And if you get to that point, and we're looking with some countries around the 30% mark plus, if these go ahead, because they've already got some tariffs as well. Once you get past that point, you basically have a barrier to trade that is so great that there isn't any trade. Yeah. Now, as we saw with what happened in 2020 when trade got cut off, and the number of freight cargo freight tankers that are going around the world, and that's container tankers, that just literally went off the scale. So instead of being able to hire one of those big containers for sort of 2 or 3 grand, it was costing 17 grand. Oh, and then you can't get anything. If you do get anything, it costs a lot of money. You have to wait a long time for it. There is a massive impact on this, especially with our just-in-time economy.
And I don't think people quite realise that. It seems a very dry subject. It's happening over there, away from us. How is it going to affect us?
Next time you order something on Amazon, you might notice.
Well, and that's the thing. Anybody that orders fast fashion, they're going to notice a change on that as well. We all like American products, sweets, things like that, that we take for granted.
Yeah, what do we buy? That's the thing. We don't buy American cars because they're not very good unless you're buying one of the sort of the classic cars.
That's why they buy ours.
That's why they buy our cars and German cars and everything. So, but there is an argument that we could, if we as British consumers just say, well, okay, we're not going to buy a lot of your goods then. We'll buy cheaper goods from elsewhere. Reciprocal, because there is an element where lots of companies that would normally sell to America won't be able to sell those goods because they're 20% or whatever more expensive, and then they will be looking to sell in this country, in other countries. So we may see other goods. That, of course, could also have the impact of undercutting some of our domestic production.
Absolutely, and I think that we need to look after our farming community, because I think that we are at risk if we start, like the EU, to make these changes to tariffs. We're going to affect our own farmers and our own produce makers. And I think that we need to be really careful with what we do. And I do think actually this sort of wait and see rhetoric from Keir Starmer's not a bad one in that respect.
Not. It's all very well, the EU, Ursula von der Leyen being all sort of, the big I am. Yeah, let's see how this works out. If you sell a lot more goods to another country, you haven't really got the power. One of the things I am worried about, that it's not just economic, is that actually we see economic sanctions as a crucial part of diplomacy and of warfare now, in terms of economic sanctions on Iran, economic sanctions on Russia and the like. Think about economic sanctions. They're an extension of national power. They only have power if people want to buy your stuff. Okay. One of the reasons why America wants to, keep control of the global oceans and is concerned about China seizing by military or any other way at Taiwan is because they want control of the South China Seas. There's massive, very, very important routes for shipping. Your trading power, your economic power is crucial to your military power, as we know with our absolutely hopeless economy. Let's put more money in defence. Well, we haven't got any, So these things are all massively tied in. I worry they're also tied in the other way, which is that actually an economic trade war could end up leading to such bad relations between countries that were until a few months ago considered close allies, like Britain and America, the EU and Australia, the Five Eyes, Anglophile nations, that we could end up seeing an explosion into real war. I'm genuinely worried that there is a lot more that could go wrong in this.
And I think you're right, and there is. The international implications of this are enormous, and the strategic importance of places like Greenland can't be underestimated. Trump saying, oh, if I want it, I'll have it. And J.D. Vance going in there and saying the same thing. Well, hold on, you can't just go and take territory that isn't yours.
And people forget, again, Greenland is all about economics.
Absolutely.
It's all about control and shipping routes and getting the Arctic.
The minerals.
So is Panama Canal.
Yeah.
It's all about economics. It's all about economic power, which promotes military power. Military power promotes economic power. It's circular. It's all tied in. There's a lot more going on.
Yeah.
Whether this is Liberation Day or not for American consumers who are going to face 20% plus hikes on goods coming into the country, even, by the way, for their own cars. Oh, my God, they love their cars. And they need their cars. You can't get anywhere in America unless you're in the middle of one of the big cities, unless you've got a car. And we're looking at people facing huge hikes on cars, not just the BMWs or Jaguars coming from Britain and Europe, but on American cars, because there isn't a single American car with a new American brand made in America that does not have auto parts that come from, which are now going to face those tariffs, including those 20% tariffs over there, coming from another country, whether it's Mexico, Canada, or anywhere else. They go in and out 2 or 3 times. We're looking at a huge extra cost for one of the basics of American consumer life.
And it's the symbol of freedom, isn't it, for all Americans? They've got their car, they get their licence and they go and drive. And when you're talking about the basic car parts making 6 journeys in and out of tariff areas, people aren't going to be able to afford it much longer.
No, it's absolutely... I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think there's method in Donald Trump's madness? Is he trying to... Is this all going to get... We're going to get over this in a month and he's going to actually undo all of the madness of tariffs that does impact trade, and we're going to have more freer trade? Or do you think this could escalate worse? What should Keir Starmer do? What do you think? Do you think he's playing a good game so far, just trying to quietly get that deal behind the scenes for a free trade deal? What are you willing to give away? Because there will be a cost to a free trade deal, ironically. Do give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Let's also talk about the Chagos Islands. Extraordinarily, Donald Trump has signed off on the Chagos Islands deal. I think he, let's face it, the rest of us didn't know where the Chagos Islands were in the middle of the Indian Ocean. We Googled it on the day it first became news. But the crucial thing is the Diego Garcia military base. The view was always, well, the Americans won't like this. Why would we give the Chagos Islands, which are ours, to Mauritius? They've never owned them. They're thousands of miles away. They're very close to China. Diplomatically, this is a disaster for us. It's a crucial military base. Our nuclear subs can port and the like. But the assumption was the US they were trying to get over the line before Donald Trump got in, because they thought that Donald Trump would veto it because it was such a mad deal. Turns out he's ready to sign it off. What on earth is going on?
I don't know. This story broke when I was on your show a few months ago. I remember it coming in.
We did quickly get our phones out and go, Chagos Islands, where are they?
I had dealt with the Chagos Islands at the Home Office previously because I'd met with some of the Chagosian community who are rightly angry about this. They've not been asked if they wanted their homeland to be given away to Mauritius.
They're not living there anyway.
They're not, but they haven't
something like 3% or 1% of the population of the Chagos Islands is now the Chagosians.
It is, the rest of it is Diego Garcia. But I think the real concern that we have, giving away, plus giving extra money to Mauritius for taking them off our hands. But we open the door to further intrusion from China. The Mauritian government is incredibly close to China. Who's to say that drones, satellite imagery is not going to be appearing across Diego Garcia, compromising all of us?
It will. I mean, it just will. Yeah. It's madness, isn't it? Let's also talk about, we're going to talk to Lord Dannatt, the former military chief. No, he knows his stuff, and he's actually said previously, we should just give the Chagos Islands to US. That's better than giving it to the Mauritius. At least they won't go to Mauritius. I'm not sure whether that would even work now. What do you make of also the latest NHS surveys? There's a sort of these public these public opinion surveys which have been going on for many years, showing that NHS satisfaction has hit its lowest level ever. I mean, what a surprise! This is considered the gold standard measure of public satisfaction. This survey, it's a regular survey been carried out since 1983 by the King's Fund think tank and the Nuffield Trust. Public satisfaction with the NHS has dropped to a historic low. Only 1 in 5 people are happy with how it's working. It was a 1 in 4 roughly only a couple of years ago. Largely, it's driven by dissatisfaction with A&E services, access to GPs, and access to dentists. So, i.e., most of the services most people ever use. Once they get to see a consultant, they're happy, but otherwise they're not happy with it. I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise, but it is interesting because previously people have always said, well, they're angry about this or that individual story they see in the news, but their own personal feeling is that they think the NHS has done well. I don't meet many people who say that anymore.
That's because nobody can get into the NHS to start with. If you try and get a GP appointment, it's nigh impossible. You have to run a gauntlet of e-consults or online systems, and then receptionists. So you can't get into it in the first place. And I think everybody's attitude towards the NHS has changed since COVID. Before that, we were quite rightly proud of the system that we had. It may not have been perfect.
I wasn't quite rightly proud of it even before.
It may not have been perfect, but most people had a pretty good experience.
When you're actually dealing with the individual people, always lovely doctors and nurses, I mean, well, most of the time, you know, and you feel like once you got in, you've got a good service, and you felt some sympathy for them that they were working in a difficult circumstance.
That's right. And then after COVID, where nothing has returned, the services appear worse. You can't actually criticise it because then you're told, oh, well, you mustn't do that. It's a bastion of being British.
Don't stop us.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I think that's phrase it. The ship has sailed. I think people are now realising when you look at what's happened in other countries, and their health systems did not shut down for everyone other than 80-year-olds with COVID. I'm sorry, it didn't. And they're not seeing the death rates that we're seeing. I mean, 20,000 people dying just because they can't get treated in A&E, even when they've gone to A&E. And we had the thing the other day, my daughter had hit her head, had concussion, which actually ended up, really being quite unwell for a week. And genuinely, should we go to A&E? Well, we're just going to see an A&E for 8 hours with people being drunk and vomiting around us. We're not, we live near enough that if something happens, we can rush there. But realistically, unless it is literally your leg is hanging off, you're having a heart attack, you're thinking, what's the point? I'm not going to get treated for hours, certainly on a Friday night or something. I mean that's the thing. I think a lot of people they just kind of shrug and go, it's not worth it. We're not going to get it. And that is not a way to live.